There is a fascinating piece of research from Dr. Richard Johnson that suggests that fructose might be one of the main culprits in the development of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. The interesting and scary part about this research is that it's not only about the fructose that you eat, that you ingest, it's also about the fact that our body produces fructose from the excess glucose. Stick around until the end to understand why this is a big problem and it's so scary. So let's do a quick review of the abstract of the research, and then we will hear directly from Dr. Johnson. So the title is Could Alzheimer's Disease Be a Maladaptation of an Evolutionary Survival Pathway Mediated by Intracerebral Fructose and Uric Acid Metabolism? So let's review the important points in this abstract. Unlike glucose, which is a source for immediate energy needs, fructose metabolism results in an orchestrated response to encourage food and water intake, reduce resting metabolism, stimulate fat and glycogen accumulation, and induce insulin resistance as a means to reduce metabolism and preserve glucose supply for the brain. Here we review and extend a previous hypothesis that this survival mechanism has a major role in the development of Alzheimer's disease and may account for many of the early features, including cerebral glucose hypometabolism, mitochondrial dysfunction, and neuroinflammation. We propose that the pathway can be engaged in multiple ways, including diets high in sugar, high glycemic carbohydrates, and salt. In summary, we propose that Alzheimer's disease may be the consequence of a maladaptation to an evolutionary-based survival pathway, and what had served to enhance survival acutely becomes injurious when engaged for extensive periods. Let's discuss about these topics. First of all, why is fructose so damaging, and how is it driving Alzheimer's disease? Number two, how is our body producing fructose? And which is worse, the fructose that we ingest or the fructose that we produce? And finally, what is fructose after all? Where do I find it? How can I avoid it? All right, let's hear it directly from Dr. Johnson.
So what we find is that when you give fructose, the side chain reaction causes oxidative stress to the mitochondria, and that reduces the ATP, which creates an alarm signal, and hey, we're at risk of starving. And all these oxidative reactions, one drives insulin resistance. One blocks the oxidation of fat. Blood pressure goes up. All of this is related to the one mechanism. And when it suppresses the mitochondrial production, the oxygen needs go down. So it's like a survival mechanism. So what happens is when an animal eats a lot of fructose, and in animals, it's mainly by eating a ton of fruit, not the kind we eat, where we're eating just a few. They'll eat like 1,000 berries at a time, or they'll eat like a orangutan will eat like 100 mangoes, all at once. So when they eat all this fructose, they activate this system to help them survive when there's not food around. But at the same time, it's blocking the fat from producing the ATP to fill up the ATP. So the ATP is low, so normally the fat would be broken down to provide the ATP to fill it up. It causes metabolic inflexibility. So the fat can't break down to support the ATP. And it stimulates foraging for food. So the animals get hungry, thirsty, and they start searching for food.
So I think the key piece of information here in this clip was that fructose causes a reduction of ATP production, so of energy production. And it does that through the production of uric acid, which induces oxidative stress in the mitochondria. And all of this leads to a foraging behavior, overeating, and ultimately metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, and weight gain. And the purpose of all of this is survival. So now you might be thinking, how is this related to Alzheimer's?
And as we started studying it, we realized that, its characteristic findings are insulin resistance. It's like the thing that does it. We haven't found any other food that does it like it does. It's like the hallmark. It absolutely causes a drop in ATP in the mitochondria, and it suppresses the mitochondria, and it causes inflammation. And here I'm reading about Alzheimer's and the early things, and I go, holy shit, these are the same three things. There has to be a relationship. But the problem that I had was that when you eat fructose, and you label the fructose, almost all of it's removed by the liver. About 10% gets into the circulation. And it didn't seem to me that would be enough. But then when we started realizing that the body makes fructose, the fruit, when you eat fructose, it stimulates this production from glucose. It comes from glucose. Fructose, glucose, high carbs, salt. And then I started reading about Alzheimer's. And I said, well, what are the risk factors for Alzheimer's? Obesity, that's definitely through the fructose pathway. Diabetes, that's definitely through the fructose pathway. High glycemic carbs, that causes fructose to go up in the brain. It's already been shown. Soft drinks increase the risk for Alzheimer's. Okay, in fact, it's the glucose may be worse than the fructose. Because it gets converted to fructose everywhere in the body.
But
if you eat fructose alone, most of the fructose is removed by the liver. But if you eat a lot of glucose and it gets into the blood, then fructose is being made everywhere.
So basically, Dr. Johnson is saying that fructose is driving all the diseases that are the major risk factors for developing dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So it could be one of the main root causes. And also in this segment, there were two other pieces of information that are really, really important to understand. One, it's not only the fructose that you eat. Your body can produce fructose from the glucose that you ingest. Number two, Dr. Johnson is suggesting that the glucose that we produce endogenously might actually be worse than the fructose that we ingest, because the fructose that we ingest is processed by almost entirely by the liver. But the fructose that we produce in our body is produced everywhere, even in the brain. Then you should only know about the amyloid plaques and the tau protein related to Alzheimer's. Let's see what Dr. Johnson has to say about this.
They found that not only did these animals have trouble, getting through a maze, but they found amyloid plaque and tau protein in their hippocampus at 18 weeks. And then if you look at human studies, they found that people who drink 2 soft drinks a day have a much higher risk for problems with memory, and also on CT scan have a smaller brain volume. And then a group did this study where they did autopsy studies, and they measured the fructose in the brain of patients with Alzheimer's, and it's 5-fold higher than in controls. And all the other things like the enzyme that converts the glucose to fructose and other ones that are associated with the ATP depletion, they were all found to be elevated.
All right. All of this is super interesting, but in practical terms, what is fructose? How can I avoid it? Fructose is a monosaccharide, so a simple sugar. If you want to avoid fructose, avoid the following things. Number one, table sugar. Table sugar, also known as sucrose, is half glucose and half fructose. So every time you ingest something with table sugar, you are ingesting fructose and glucose. High fructose corn syrup has fructose. To avoid all foods and drinks with high fructose corn syrup. Fruit has fructose. Fruit has both fructose and glucose, like table sugar. All modern packaged processed foods have either table sugar or high fructose corn syrup or some other type of sugar, full of fructose and glucose, both of them. And finally, as Dr. Johnson was saying, it's not only the fructose that you're eating, the fructose that your body is producing might even be worse. How does your body produce fructose out of glucose? Well, when there is a lot of glucose around. And why do you have a lot of glucose around? Because you're eating foods that contain a lot of glucose. All the table sugar, high fructose corn syrup, fruits, as we were saying, pasta, pizza, bread, crackers, breadsticks, rice, and all that stuff. It's all glucose, and you're eating it from the morning until the night before you go to bed. All right, it's still too difficult. In simple terms, what should I eat to avoid all this glucose and fructose? You should only eat whole, natural, nutrient-dense foods. So, meats, fish, eggs, fermented dairy, and all the non-starchy vegetables. Ditch or greatly decrease your consumption of all modern refined carbohydrates and sugary foods. Those are poisons. You might think, Andrea, how do you know? Well, this is me 5 years ago, after many decades of yo-yo dieting. Basically, I was eating my way to diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, and if I survived all of that, dementia and Alzheimer's, because my diet was full of high refined carbohydrates and sugars. Now, getting out of that situation is not that easy, actually, especially because we are bombarded by information that is either incomplete or completely wrong. I will post videos in the future to explain how to approach this problem step by step. So stick around, subscribe to my channel. All right. I hope this video was useful to you. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Until the next video. Bye now.